she don't care what you think. Granniopteryx, granniopteryx, she knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Yeah, you see, it's not so much that I believe that all the elite driving British society are actively working towards the idea that Islam should be helped to take over the place. No. But I can see again and again a sort of creeping influence that's changing the way our so-called intellectual elite think. The thing about the highest proportion of our, sort of BBC, Guardianistas, and even many politicians is that they tend to be socialists of one sort or another. And the fact is that most adult socialists aren't that bright. Now, don't get me wrong, in most cases, just like the rest of humanity, the capacity is there. It's not that they lack the capacity. It's not that they lack the wetware. What they lack is curiosity. And it's curiosity that leads you to investigate the logical conclusions of your own opinions. So, your opinions might lead you to conclusion X. But, well, that's not the end, is it? The universe is infinite, and so when you get to X, there'll always be a Y, and after that, a Z. And then, after that, a whole lot of letters that we don't know about yet. And that's the trouble with socialism. Once you've got to the socialist paradise, that's supposed to be the end. There's no curiosity about what happens after that. So maybe a capitalist will say something like, let's imagine X. Now, let's imagine what happens if you get to X and then proceed from there. While a socialist will say, let's imagine X. Now, that's it. When you've made X, time and the world stops because we've reached X. Nirvana, to borrow a concept that doesn't quite fit. You ask one of those Palestine people what happens once Palestine is free, they won't be able to think of it. If you ask what happens after X, they don't understand the question. So far as they're concerned, it's turtles all the way down. And if you don't recognise that reference, I'll leave a link to Wikipedia for you in the description. You're welcome. Okay, I'm Granniopteryx. Please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. Liking is very important. It helps the algorithm, whatever the algorithm is. If you want to contribute financially to help me keep doing this, then all the links to the various platforms you can use will be in the description. All right. Let's just talk about reaching X. So, I've been thinking about this while becoming aware of the sudden efflorescence of adverts for non-alcoholic drinks that mimic cocktails. It's not that I object to such things, I'm not much of a drinker myself, but suddenly it's chic to avoid alcohol, and I'm starting to wonder why. And then there's the provision of halal meat in schools, which seems to be a matter of course now, on the grounds that Muslim children shouldn't be expected to eat non-halal meat. That's fine with me. But it doesn't have to mean they have to eat halal meat at all in school. When I was at school, and a considerable way into my adulthood, I was a vegetarian. I had to modify that because of some health issues, but back to my school days. There were a few kids like that, and we just had the vegetarian options. So that could be something the Muslim children could take up, couldn't it? But no, there's a feeling that because Muslims are there, halal meat has to be provided. Halal slaughter is awful, and I don't see why our elite will even countenance such a thing in our state schools. Yeah, private Muslim schools, that's something else. They can do what they want. But halal in state schools, that's an imposition on all of us, which nobody, least of all those chaps in the BBC, appear to be bothered by particularly. And you have to wonder why it doesn't bother them. It's like their thought processes have been changed in some way. But, well, what really disturbed me was the Lucy Connolly case, which brought something to my attention. And it wasn't so much her as what the judge said in his sentencing remarks. So I've got the sentencing remarks here, and I'll bring them up for you. Here they are. And he said, as everyone is aware, some people used that tragedy as an opportunity to sow division and hatred, often using social media, leading to a number of towns and cities being disfigured by mindless and racist violence, intimidation and damage, which has been summarised by the prosecution today. It is the strength of our society that it is both diverse and inclusive. There is always a very small minority of people who will seek an excuse to use violence and disorder, causing injury, damage, loss and fear to wholly innocent members of the public. And sentences for those who incite racial hatred and disharmony in our society are intended to both punish and deter. And it was this here, disharmony in our society, which particularly caught my attention because it reminded me of something else. First of all, I have to point out that this isn't just the judge's opinion. It's absolutely in line with the Sentencing Council guidelines for offences of stirring up hatred. I kid you not, that's how it's phrased. And those guidelines were issued in 2020 under Boris Johnson's Conservative government. So you can't blame the Labour Party for anything. But as is often the case, the Labour Party take ideas like that and run with them. And but when I saw that disharmony in our society, I, as I said, was reminded of something much older than a law passed in 2020. And I shall refer you to another jurisprudence that is not native to this country, that has a similar idea couched in similar terms. It refers to the punishment which should be inflicted upon a criminal for spreading mischief in the land. Spreading mischief in the land sounds a lot like disharmony in our society, doesn't it? Or rather, I might say that disharmony in our society sounds a lot like spreading mischief in the land. And that law comes from chapter 5, verse 33 of the Quran. Now, this rule about spreading mischief in the land, just like the idea of disharmony in our society, has wide interpretations. And you may say, oh, it'll never happen here. Well, in Iran right now, that rule is being applied for instance, to execute women who won't wear the hijab. You can define mischief or disharmony as almost anything. In both cases, the concepts are loose, floppy, and imprecise enough to be abused by almost any tyrant. And I wonder how the British legal system fell to that sort of low. Well, maybe you can answer that question, but it seems to me that there's being a subtle change in the way the British see the world somehow. and it's obviously being influenced by our elite. I did mention in a previous video how in a television discussion of a sort about flying the British flag, the presenters kept talking about the far right. They must have mentioned it about 5 times within about as many minutes. I think they might have used that a bit more. It's just a subtle idea, well, it's not so subtle, being pushed into our minds. And I'm starting to wonder whether ideas of Quranic jurisprudence, alcohol, halal, spreading mischief, are somehow leaking into a British way of thinking. Well, what do you think? Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.